We now turn our attention to Imperial Holdings. Of course, we saw vehicle sales data released today. NAMSA numbers out showing a 7% year-on-year growth in January, month-on-month 6.8%. So slightly soft, but a number that we can, of course, work with, and it would be quite telling with regards to how it will impact Imperial going forward. I know you look at different retail sales numbers, Jonathan, so far better scenario playing out with the numbers you look at.
Well, I mean, AMH, which Imperial owns, came out at 26% up. But I mean, that's mainly restocking into the rental fleet. So that's a bit of a volatile number. So don't read too much into it.
Okay, well, let's just then delve into Imperial on your end. It is a company that has had fantastic numbers that we saw coming through last year. Headline earnings per share were up significantly. Operating profit also up almost 40% last year. Revenue was up over 20%. Can these numbers be repeated?
Well, not at that same rate. But I mean, Imperial's been making a few acquisitions. They need to bed them down a bit. They bought Lenkering quite recently. They're waiting for approval for that to go through. And we've seen pretty good numbers coming out of the vehicle sales. So, I mean, Imperial, it's doing well. I mean, if the one thorn of its side is probably the rental business. The rental business, it's capital intensive and it's actually pretty low returns. I know they say tourism numbers have been pretty weak. It's looking like that they're a little bit overstocked in terms of number of vehicles. So, yeah, but I mean, Imperial, it's had a very good run.
Okay, before you can say hot or not, let's go to Craig to find out some of his thoughts. A few interesting points that Jonathan mentioned, Craig, with regards to the acquisition of Lenkering Holdings. It's a company that is based in Germany. It's quite interesting because it serves the chemical, agriculture and petrochemical and even steel industries as well. Do you think that it is a company that is going to work in Imperial's favour?
Well, look, I think the acquisition's earnings enhancing. It gives the group a slightly different focus, and of course they are operating in the United Kingdom, in Australia, so it's actually nice to see a little bit of a global spread to the company, and obviously over the years they've lost that South African focus, and so for those point of things are positive for
and earnings enhancing, as you mentioned.
Acquisition. I think that the vehicle sales, of course, could be a little bit subdued, but when we look at the reports every month, they've probably been a little bit higher than what's been expected. So I'm still expecting pretty good vehicle sales. There's obviously the factor of low interest rates. Normally when we see a devaluation in the rand now at the beginning of the year, or weaker rand, people start thinking about going out and purchasing new vehicles. So these things could play out in the short term for Imperial, and so from that point of view, I think there may be some surprises in the figures as well as the income coming down from those acquisitions.
Craig, Jonathan also mentioned tourism. There's been quite a bit of contention. Do you think that Imperial should be considering selling this part of the business? It's very small.
The tourism part. Yeah, look, I don't think it's a focus area. Of course, it probably was important for them thinking of 2010 and so on, but moving past that, your car hire tourism side maybe isn't as big a focus, but logistics is certainly an important part, and I just get this feeling that 2012 is going to be better for logistics. You can see it from the sort of expectations of Supergroup, even Grindrod, and what's expected for this year. So perhaps the logistics side will also be very good for Imperial.
And of course,
2012. In fact, we're seeing it in the share price. I've looked at the price, and it's been moving up gradually quite nicely. So there's certainly been quite a bit of interest in the company.
Jonathan, obviously, Craig has been talking about the logistics side of things, and it makes the largest chunk out of revenue, 32% of revenue. So it's very positive news that we've actually seen a nice recovery within the space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's. I don't think I can add much to what you've said.
With regards to what we can expect going forward on the operating margin level, the last number we saw sitting at 7%, it is something that we'd like to see increase because it has been at higher levels than this. Can it be done?
Well, sure. I mean, they've got to sweat the assets a little more. I know they're looking for capital light businesses, so that they don't have to put a lot of capital into and have a lot of fixed assets in order to generate a return. But yeah, it's been higher, and certainly I think they probably can.
What is your sense on the recently acquired CIC? It's a fast-moving consumer good in Southern Africa. do you think that it is also going to be earnings enhancing?
Well, I mean, anything, I mean, I think everybody's kind of looking for the Africa expansion. I'm a little bit worried about a lot of South African businesses all trying to pile into Africa, but I think Imperial, I mean, they've been operating in there for a while anyway, so I think they have a pretty good understanding and it will be enhancing.
Craig, would you say one of the biggest threats are the rises in the petrol price that we've actually seen, and of course diesel being a very big important factor and commodity for Imperial?
It puts a bit of short-term pressure, but invariably they're able to pass those costs on to the consumer. So it's sometimes a little bit of a delay, and it is. But the fact is, everybody in the logistics game has to pay the same price for petrol. It's a set price. So the end result is that it's not as big an effect as one would like to see. I think toll fees and so on is also something that could be mentioned in a similar vein. But you know, one has to look at the company now as an international operator. I think what's perhaps more important is we've seen a weaker rand. Those international operations will benefit from that in terms of translation back to rand. So yeah, there's probably a little bit more positive than the oil price has been one of the negatives. So.
Okay, so Craig, hot or not?
I'm a little bit undecided on it in terms of the current price, but my rating would probably be a hold at current levels. So.
Okay, so if you own it, you hold, and if you don't, what do you do, Craig?
You don't look for a little bit of a pullback, and then it's certainly something to get into. Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan, hot or not?
I mean, we bought it at 100 Rand last year, and actually last week we sold out the rest of Imperial. So I'm going to say it's not hot. It's a valuation at close to 140 Rand a share. It's trading at 2.3 times.
And you sold at what? 100?
No. We bought it at 100,
okay.
And we sold out last week at about 135.
Okay, it's sitting at around 137. So
yeah,
well, no shock.
2 Rand, it's fine. You've got to leave some on the table for the next guy. You can't get too greedy.
Yeah.
But at 2.3 times book, I mean, it's 22-year average is 2.4 times book, and it's at an ROE of just under 20%. So I mean, it's fairly priced. And I mean, look, I think earnings are going to probably surprise on the upside, so maybe there's a bit more. But I mean,
just
I
an
wouldn't be
interesting
buying.
point, and also just for the viewers, because HSBC actually came out with a new price target for Imperial to 170 Rand from the previous number that they'd put up, 150. So you might just be losing out on a rally there if you, of course, agree with the HSBC.
That's fine. We switched it into super group, so.
All right, so let's now get into our guest hot stock picks. Craig, your hot stock pick, and I'm sure you've used this hot stock before, Winhold.
I'm not sure that I have, because my take on it's a little bit different to before. The company has had very constant sales, very constant earnings if you go look back 6-7 years, and I've always wondered what is the catalyst that will get the share price re-rated. But I think if you analyse last year's statement, a lot of bad news went into it.
Yeah.
They cleared out a lot of dead stock, and they've made changes to management. They're very focused on marketing and sales, and the environment in which they operate, where they move their product, particularly on the Inman side, has changed a little bit. And so I think we're going to start seeing a re-rating. It's a huge discount to NAV, but a lot of that NAV is plant equipment and the subsidiaries that it holds, a good 60% discount to it. But I think that also tells us a little bit of a story in terms of that really there's been no re-rating of the share. And I do think we could see north of 20 cents earnings for the year. So it puts it on a PE of, 5.5. So it's pretty fairly rated, and I think there could be some upside there.
Were you agreeing there, Jonathan, to Craig's hot stock pick?
Yeah.
Quite a compelling argument.
At 5.5 it seems quite cheap, and at a quite large discount to NAV it sounds interesting.
So your hot stock pick is Amalgamated Appliances.
Well, I mean, I think I had it on last year, so it's moved up a bit. I mean, it's 2.20 Rand, I think, the share price round about. And it's got 1.20 Rand on the balance sheet in cash, and it'll earn 35 cents. So, I mean, you're paying a 3 PE for a business which plays in the retail space, and I mean, the retail is sitting on ratings of 20 times earnings. So we think
it's another way that you can get exposure to the consumer.
Yeah, and I mean, we think it's probably worth 4 Rand. I mean, I wouldn't sell it for less than 4 Rand at this point.
Fantastic. Okay, so Craig, do you agree with that? Amalgamated Appliances, would it be a stock that you'd be looking at?
Yeah, look, they've had a legal win, and I think that R1.20 is actually quite a lot higher now. So a large portion of the share price you're buying is cash that they're sitting on. And if you look at what retailers have done, I think Amalgamated Appliances are supplying a lot of those goods that we're seeing in Massmast's updates and so on. So yeah, definitely hot.